All these recreational drugs you want to do, you are being waste man. Why can't you just do art? Why can't you just be at home talking to people, reading a book?
Yeah. Now with legalizing, I just don't think that we know enough on how it affects different people.
For me, the thing is, let's look at alcohol and cigarettes. I'm sorry.
I knew
These are things that cause millions of deaths every year.
Hello, Globies. Welcome to the World Health Investigation Podcast. My name is Jocelyn.
I'm Edna. We are young global health professionals and your hosts for the World Health Investigation Podcast.
Also known as the WHI, we will be discussing all things global health, unpacking the most controversial health and social issues,
as well as promoting new wave global health development and equity.
So, Adina, what's the tea in global health today?
What's the tea in global health? We have a lot of tea. Hint, hint, some of this tea can cause you to hallucinate. But before we get into that,
we have some news to tell you.
What's in the news today?
The pre-tea before the real tea. As I said before, we like to give you some gist before you get into the real gist.
Yes.
So unfortunately, we've seen some protests since the summer of 2022. Actually, it's been going on for quite a while now. The healthcare workers, particularly doctors in the UK, are underpaid. NHS doctors being underpaid. I've seen a tweet about this woman, this junior doctor, that shared that she had her pay after tax that was £1,600.
Huh?
Yeah.
1,600?
Yeah.
What can you do with that? Pay rent?
Literally, especially in this cost of living crisis, you've paid rent. You've paid your bills, especially with the rising cost of gas, electric, and everything. What are you left with?
Just pay your bills and sit at home. And at that point,
I think that's devastating. Considering that she was complaining that she worked over 12 hours per day, and she would take extra night shifts and all this stuff, and would still not get the compensation that they deserve.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm curious, like, when she takes the extra shifts, hypothetically, she's getting paid more for those.
Obviously, this is how much she got, including the shifts that she took.
Including the shifts. Oh,
yes.
Wow.
So I think it's quite alarming. I think it concerns everyone because we saw during the pandemic, everybody was clapping outside. Everybody was clapping outside for healthcare workers. But guess what? They're underpaid. Unfortunately, clapping is not enough.
Clapping will not pay their bills.
Clapping will not pay their bills. So, there's not much that we can do as people, but we can definitely speak about it and protest as well. Join them with this movement, joining all healthcare workers together and fight this fight together. They deserve a lot better than this. I mean, we're healthcare workers, but like we deserve better. But I think particularly with doctors, considering how many hours they work, doctors and nurses, they're being underpaid.
Yeah. I mean, personally, one thing you can do is, if you end up being a patient and you're talking to doctors and nurses, be nice. Be respectful.
Yeah.
Don't just come there anyway, anyhow. They're working long hours. They're trying their best.
Yeah, and it's so sad because unfortunately, I know like so many medical students, and I hate to say it, but many of them have an out strategy. Everyone is thinking of how they're going to find their way to Canada, to the US, to a different country because they're not satisfied with having a long-term pay in the UK considering this.
It's true. You do hear a lot of studies about how doctors trained here in the UK, a lot of them end up not even practicing as doctors after they finish their medical degrees. Like they just go on to do something else. And I think it's kind of crazy that even us, we know some medical students who have side gigs.
Yeah.
They have side hustles. And I'm like, you're a doctor already. Is that not enough?
Already.
Apparently not.
Imagine doctors, like we're trusting them with our lives. And now they're taking side hustle. Were they going to be fully focused?
To
do
Already they work long hours.
I mean, they're working long hours. So it's almost like it's quite demoralizing considering that the healthcare system is overburdened. There are not enough doctors, and we don't want them to leave. We need them to stay.
We need them to stay. Imagine you put all that money to train your doctors and then they don't stay.
And on top of the debt, oh my days.
Oh yes.
Because they're taking student loans, so the debt that comes by the time you it takes you like how many years to pay off those debts?
Exactly.
Like more than 20 years to pay off those debts.
You're not getting paid enough now.
And you're not getting paid enough now. So please, what can we do? Just
respect doctors.
Respect doctors. But also we are, trying to get attention about this. We're trying to raise awareness about this, just to let everybody know that it is an issue, and that hopefully there will be policies that will be adjusted such that it can accommodate for better pay for healthcare workers.
Agreed. And so that leads us to our topic for this week.
Yeah. What you got?
I'm very excited for this topic.
What is it?
Because I've been thinking about this topic for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about drugs. Guys, we're talking about drugs today.
Drugs. Do you got something to say?
Huh?
You have something to say?
So,
is there something you want to say? Is she telling us something?
She's not saying anything. All I'm saying is I've thought about this problem long and hard, and in my eyes, I see one solution. But you know what? I'm just one person with one opinion. We're here to discuss it, see what we think. We're talking about the legalization of all drugs.
Okay, so we're
all
going there.
The
Please, before we speak on this, we still want to remain employable.
Yes.
Just a disclaimer that whatever we say in this episode is not a reflection of what we do in our personal lives. No. And it does not mean we condone anything, okay?
No.
So do with that what you will.
At the end of the day, please, everyone, follow the law.
Follow the law.
Do not condone the use of illegal drugs. Don't do drugs. If they're illegal, don't do drugs.
Don't quote me.
Yeah, don't quote us. Don't quote us, okay? Right, so I'd like to begin with our case study.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember Whitney Houston?
And I...
Go on. Wow.
Will always love you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you.
You've just been holding that in.
Thank you.
She's been waiting for her moment.
Thank you.
I mean, we didn't ask, but thanks.
I'm gonna cry.
Let's relax. But yes, Whitney Houston, beautiful singer, beautiful woman. And as we all remember, tragically she died in 2012, February 2012.
Oh, very sad.
Yes. What do you remember about her death? Do you remember what the reported cause of death was?
I was very young at that age. First of all, just assume that it's probably drug overdose.
Drug overdose. Yeah, not a bad guess. So this is true. February 2012, she was found in the bathtub of a hotel just before the Grammys, apparently. But now people are looking at the coroner's report, because I think at that age as well, I was only maybe 13, and I thought she had died from cocaine use, specifically cocaine overdose, because I'd heard before that she was a cocaine user. But let's find out what the coroner said. So the initial reports, for example, they found that when they did blood tests, they indicated that she had smoked marijuana within 2 weeks before her death. I mean, just to note, at that time, marijuana was legal in California. If it was used for medicinal purposes. So there was marijuana already. And then the toxicologist as well, he was reporting that she was acutely intoxicated from cocaine at the time of her death. And she was known to be a repeated cocaine user.
Was it just based on what was discovered in her system afterwards?
Yeah, this is now what was discovered in her system. Right? So there was still also more stuff. They will also look around her room and all these things, and what they found was a plethora of prescription medication bottles. Now, we don't know if these were in her system at the time, but they were found in her hotel room. The final report lists a total of 12 different medications, including the anti-anxiety medication Xanax and the muscle relaxer Flexeril.
Enough. Applied medical science.
I got there in the end. Okay?
Pronunciation.
Flexoral.
You get the point.
You get it. It was a muscle relaxer. They also found an open bottle of champagne on the mini bar, which was just open, and there was also a beer can. Mm-hmm. There was a lot going on in that room.
Okay, she was taking us.
yeah. You know, we can't make any conclusions, but that was the scene that they found. Overall, in the toxicology report or the coroner's report, they concluded that she died by accidental drowning, but heart disease and cocaine use were contributing factors.
What does that mean?
It means that I think what they were assuming is, for example, when they found her, she was in the bathtub, right? Mm-hmm. And they see all this stuff that was in her system. Mm-hmm. But it didn't seem like the cocaine or the drugs had directly caused her death. Mm-hmm. They think that she just drowned in the bathtub. Maybe she was passed out from the drugs or something, and mixing of different drugs. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't necessarily the direct cause of death. Okay. Yeah, and she also had a history of heart disease, I think. Mm-hmm. So yes.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yes, people. She didn't just die of overdosing on cocaine necessarily.
No.
Yeah. So. Any thoughts, reactions?
I think first of all, that's scary. Yeah. To die in your bathtub, you're there supposed to be relaxing, enjoyment, small enjoyment, and you just pass out or you just drown.
Yeah.
That's a bit, I didn't know that. Honestly, I didn't know. And the overall, I don't know if it's a stereotype or stigma or whatever, around celebrities is that most of the time they die from a drug overdose.
Yeah.
So I mean, if that wasn't the case, then good to hear. But it's still like, okay, to what extent did they contribute? That still lingers in my brain. I'm not gonna lie. Like, to what extent did the drugs contribute to her not being able to sustain herself in that water?
Exactly. And I think when I was also reading reactions from her family and people close to her, they were like, we didn't even know she was using drugs.
Oh, wow.
I mean, because I think before she had gone through treatment and was meant to be, clean from drugs, but clearly here it showed something else. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Very tragic.
It's very tragic.
But that's Whitney Houston's story.
Oh, beautiful Whitney.
Beautiful Whitney. Rest in peace.
May she rest in peace.
Rest in power.
In power.
Keep
singing. Not in my dreams, though.
Yeah, don't haunt me.
Don't haunt me that.
But yeah, guys, so we want to talk about drugs. I mean, here with Whitney, we're seeing a case where drugs can be maybe potentially fatal, leads to some kind of death. But we're not just talking about all drugs. We're not just talking about all drugs. What kind of drugs do we want to talk about? We want to talk about psychoactive drugs.
Okay. What are psychoactive drugs?
Drugs that get you feeling something.
Feeling all types of high. No, say I'm high. So while we get high, so while we smoke weed, we're just having fun.
We're okay. Throwback. Well, I hope we don't get copyright.
Please,
YouTube.
Whatever we say here, we're not claiming anything. We're just apologizing in advance. Do not come for us.
Yeah. Anyway, so if you want the definition, psychoactive drugs, these are substances that when taken in or administered into one's systems affect mental processes. So they affect how the brain works and cause changes in mood, awareness, thoughts, feelings, behavior. And some of the examples are marijuana, heroin, LSD, cocaine, and some pain medication. So psychoactive drugs actually belong to a broader category of psychoactive substances, which include y'all's favorites: alcohol.
Oh, so y'all.
Nicotine.
So y'all's favorite.
Caffeine.
She's throwing shit at the Globies. Y'all.
You know yourselves.
You know yourself.
You know yourselves and your behaviors.
You alcohol lovers.
So, in particular today, we're not coming for all drugs.
Okay.
We want to come for the recreational drugs.
Oh, recreational drugs.
Recreational drugs.
That's what we're gonna call them.
Yeah, when you think recreational drugs, what kind of drugs do you think of?
The ones that were recreated.
Jocelyn.
What?
Can you please be serious?
Recreational drugs.
Like, just give me names of drugs that come to your mind.
That have been processed. Yeah.
Like what?
Like, I don't know, heroin.
That's a good recreational drug.
Like ecstasy. I don't know, please. Don't ask me why I know this.
So many drugs. Some would just say weed, you
I
want
just-
ecstasy.
You know, weed. The things that the people do.
Them people,
The
too.
people.
Oh my days. Actually, like recreational drugs is quite a loose term.
Mm-hmm.
And it refers to legal and illegal drugs
Okay.
that are used without medical supervision.
Okay.
So if you think about it, you're just doing them in your room.
Oh, the ones that people do in their backyards.
In the backyard.
Mm.
You know, in silence.
In silence.
Just using the drugs.
And in their own privacy.
In their own privacy.
Well, nobody can see them.
No one can see them. So there are actually 4 categories of recreational drugs that we'll look at broadly.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this word. Analgesics.
Edna. What's going on with the pronunciation today?
Analgesics.
Analgesic.
Painkillers.
Oh, see, paracetamol is a painkiller.
Paracetamol is a painkiller.
So is it a drug?
It's a drug, yes.
It's a drug.
Of course it's a drug.
Mm-hmm. It's not illegal.
It's not illegal. Depressants, stimulants, and hallucinogens. So those are our 4 categories. So we'll dive into one of them, give you examples. Analgesic.
Edna. I swear, today, yeah. We knew this topic was gonna be interesting because the pronunciation that just comes with everything, it's not for the weak.
English is not my first language.
It's okay, we don't judge.
Yeah. Painkillers, including drugs like heroin, like you mentioned, morphine, fentanyl, and codeine.
Codeine.
All the rappers singing about codeine.
Ah, what's the song you can think of?
Percocet and codeine.
Today we're just gonna be singing. Because guess what? All these artists are always singing about drugs.
Yeah, they always sing about drugs.
They always
And
sing.
they know the
They know.
names. They know the pharmacological names.
They actually do.
Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, these are painkillers, and painkillers these times they can cause a sense of euphoria. You're just happy.
I'm happy.
Just
Extra
happy.
happiness.
A lot of happiness in your life.
When they say do what makes you happy, this is what they're talking about. This is what we're talking about. They say do what makes you happy. Is this drugs? Okay. I'm just learning here. This is like drug class for me.
Yeah. Okay. Then we have depressants, like we said, and this includes alcohol.
Oh, why do you guys say like that though?
I'm just reminding y'all that alcohol is included here as a drug.
Why is alcohol a depressant?
Anyway, tranquilizers and also nicotine. That's in cigarettes.
Oh,
Isn't that interesting? So this class of drugs, these are drugs that can slow brain activity, they can reduce anxiety, but they also slow down breathing and your heart rate.
Okay.
So you can imagine these ones can easily kill you.
They can.
Yeah. Then we have stimulants.
So the ones that you need if you want to perform.
Yes.
Please do
Yes.
not quote me. I feel like I'm gonna get caught.
No. You're on something. You're on
The
something.
ones that if you want the people use, they want to go on the night out.
Yes.
They want to impress their dates. They want to say hi to people.
Yes.
They take extra drugs that
They
will
take extra drugs.
stimulate their personality.
When she said perform, I thought you meant on a school test or something or at work.
I mean, performances can be in different contexts.
You're not serious. Okay, so stimulants. We're talking about cocaine, methamphetamine, meth, and ecstasy, aka MDMA, aka Mali.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're talking about the cool stuff. The cool kids.
There's no cool. Drugs are not cool. Drugs are not cool. No matter how cool these rappers make it sound, drugs are not that cool.
They're not that cool.
They're not even that cool.
They're not that cool.
So like we said, these are drugs that speed up the brain and body activity. They increase alertness, attention, energy, blood pressure, heart rate, breathing rate.
Yes.
We're just excited.
People that just excite, they just automatically get creative, extra creative. They start planning their whole life ahead.
Yes.
Just by taking these drugs.
Yes.
It sounds
Will
exciting.
solve all the world's problems.
Yes. Tonight.
Yeah. So those are our classes of drugs. Oh, I almost forgot.
What?
The most interesting class of drugs to me, anyway. Hallucinogens.
Me, I don't like those ones. Why do I get hallucinate?
Hallucinogens.
The ones that make you feel like you're somebody that you're not.
The ones that make you go to different dimensions.
The ones that make you think there's a plant there when there's not a plant
The
there.
ones that make you talk to aliens.
The ones that make you think the world is coming to an end.
Yes. Them ones. So in this class of drugs we have LSD, which is also known as acid. Sorry. Just need to cough. That's acid.
Mm-hmm.
We have psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms.
Ooh.
We have marijuana.
The ones that make you dream a little.
Yeah. We have ketamine. We have ayahuasca.
Oh, ayahuasca. See, all these names. See, the way you're explaining it, it makes me actually imagine them, like imagine the feeling.
Yeah.
See, I would not usually memorize it like that. I did all my pharmacology modules and I've forgotten the names, but now you're saying it like that. It makes sense.
It's coming back.
It's coming back.
So hallucinogens, these are drugs that cause this like profound distortions in the person's perception of reality, aka they get you tripping.
Oh, that you tripping.
They get you tripping.
Make you go cray.
Yeah. The way I've heard some people describe it. Yeah, you
okay, make you go mad. Okay, lose your mind. Okay, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, you really are traveling to different realms of existence.
Existence, wow.
Yeah. Okay, so those are our drugs. So we're talking about drugs today in this podcast. These are kind of the categories we're going to be speaking about. But I have a question for you.
Okay.
What do you think about the term recreational drugs?
Nah, I've really answered your question.
Does like
the drugs that you recreate?
Jocelyn. The drugs that you recreate.
Yes.
Anyway, fine. I'll answer my own question. I thought it was not that problematic, and then I came across this quote from a retired physician. He said, "Recreational drugs is a bad term. It suggests that drugs can be fun and safe. All drugs are nightmarish and dangerous. They alter our perception of reality and diminish our ability to reason, both of which endanger us. Drugs create psychological and physical dependence, both of which enslave us. Recreation is a legitimate need that requires legitimate activities, such as hobbies, exercise, conversation, music, dance, arts, and literature." Man is saying all these recreational drugs you want to do, you're being waste man. Why can't you just do art? Why can't you just be at home talking to people, reading a book?
Yeah.
You agree?
I don't agree, but I get what he's saying.
I get what
he's saying.
Yeah. I get what he means. Recreational does make it sound like it's for fun. Just doing heroin for fun.
So what's the real meaning of recreational drugs?
The real meaning of recreational drugs, literally, legal and illegal drugs that are used without medical supervision. So it's very broad.
It's very broad, okay.
It's very broad. But yeah, that's recreational drugs. So yeah, these drugs can be used in your free time, just for fun, whatever it may be. We already know people do them. But are they all safe and just fun?
No.
Could there be
No.
Could there be potential harms?
Of course.
Like what? What could go wrong?
Overdose. I take it, I die. Like if Edna takes it, she could be fine. Yeah. But if I take it, I could die. Like just because your friend took it doesn't mean that, it's gonna have the same effect on you.
It's true.
It could just mean that, they have a different, metabolic system. So
true.
Yeah, the effects on people are just different.
They're just different. We don't know how people react to drugs. They alter your brain.
They do.
We all have different brains.
We all have different brains, though.
Yeah, we all have different genetics.
Speaking of that, different genetic predispositions, and we'll also get into that in a bit more detail later.
Yeah. Anyway, what I'm particularly thinking about is tolerance, dependence, and addiction.
Okay.
So I'll just go a bit into what those terms mean, because I don't think people always make like the distinction. So when you are in a state of just drug tolerance, this means, with the long-term use of some drugs, even those that can be prescribed by a doctor, they can cause some people to develop a tolerance, which means that they need higher and or more frequent doses of the drug to get the desired effect. So a lot of y'all who may drink coffee, you may already know this. I know this. I drink a lot of coffee. Where before I started at 1 teaspoon of coffee. Then it became 2 teaspoons of coffee that I needed to stay awake. Then it became 3. I won't go too much into detail about where we are now.
How many do you take now?
Bro, okay, now I just do double shots of espresso.
Okay, per day?
Not every day.
Okay.
I try to limit it because of this effect of tolerance. So that I'm not always needing crazy amounts of coffee to stay awake.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what happens with other drugs as well. the more you use them, the more you're gonna require to get the desired effect.
Yeah, essentially like resistance.
Yeah, it's basically like resistance. You're right. Then we move a level higher to drug dependence, and so this occurs with repeated use, causing the neurons, the little connections in your brains, to adapt so they only function normally in the presence of the drug.
Okay.
So when you're at the level of dependence, it's like your brain literally can only function normally when this drug is there. The absence of the drug causes several physiological reactions, ranging from mild cases in caffeine, like I just explained, to potentially life-threatening cases such as with heroin. So some chronic patients are dependent on opioids and require medical support to even stop taking the drug.
Yeah, because they would have withdrawal symptoms.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, literally it's now like you require the drug to be normal.
To be normal.
Yeah, physiologically your body has not changed.
Yeah, that does not sit well with me, but okay.
Yeah. Now we move on to drug addiction. So when you talk about drug addiction, this is something I learned. Medically, it can actually be considered a chronic disease. It is characterized by compulsive or uncontrollable drug seeking and use despite harmful consequences and long-lasting changes in the brain. So addiction is, you will know it causes your teeth to fall out. You know you don't have any more money, but you are just like, I need to go find this drug some way, somehow. I'll do whatever it takes. The changes can result in harmful behaviors by those who misuse the drugs, whether they're prescription or illicit drugs, illegal drugs. So that's when we're at the level of drug addiction. Yeah.
Essentially, you're like, okay, it's either this or I'm die.
Yeah. It's either this or I die.
Give me drugs now or I'm die.
Right now. Yeah. So why should we care? Do you think people should care about drugs?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We should care about drugs. I think it is a public health concern because people are doing it, and we have seen, as I said before, many celebrities do die from some form of drug overdose. It's quite a thing. Not just celebrities, but even I've heard of like medical students at university that will try to take drugs because they simply cannot handle the stress of life, and they end up being like addicted. They find out they have some form of addiction. So I think it is a public health concern. It is a concern that we need to think about, not just on a fun level or like on a political level, but also like more from a health aspect.
100%. It's like, you would think with so many people doing drugs, why do they continue? First, I'd like to jump into how many people actually use drugs each year. This was interesting to look up. If you had to guess, how many people use drugs each year in the world?
In the world.
How many people die, rather? How many people die from drug use?
I know in the US, there were about, I think in 2015, there were about 7 million people that died from some form of drug overdose.
Mad.
I'm not too sure. I think. So if I'm to go based off that, estimating the world, it's probably a lot, like millions of people.
Wow. I mean, you're somewhere. Yes, somewhere. The answer shocked me too, even when you think globally. And this is coming from our World in data. And this is based on numbers from 2019. So we can look at drug use in terms of direct deaths from drug use, and indirect deaths. So direct deaths are, like you said, overdoses, and then indirect deaths are those which can result from the drug use being a risk factor for the development of various diseases or injuries. So for instance, if you are using a drug that requires like injections, you're putting yourself at risk of hepatitis and HIV infection, right? And they're also linked to suicide, liver disease, etc. So from direct deaths, they estimate that approximately it's 500,000 globally.
500,000?
500,000 globally in 2019.
Okay, I was way off.
And then from indirect deaths, they think it's 180,000. So combined total is 680,000 deaths, thereabouts. Just under a million deaths from drug use.
So where did I get this stat from?
I don't know where you got this stat from.
I saw the stat. That's the magic.
Yeah. I can only imagine it's hard to measure even globally.
Yeah.
So yeah, 680,000 deaths. That's still a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's still a lot of people. Like, and to put that into perspective, hey, where's the English today?
English language.
To put that into perspective for everyone, the deaths, direct and indirect from alcohol, 2.6 million.
Interesting.
In the world in 2019.
Fascinating.
Smoking, 8.7 million deaths in 2019 globally.
Fascinating.
Isn't that very interesting? Drug use doesn't even come close to it. Doesn't come to a million. Alcohol 2.6.
But then my question, I don't have a question though.
Go for it.
My thing is now like, wouldn't deaths from illegal drug misuse be underestimated?
Why?
Because the people that smuggle them and use them are doing it on the low low. Therefore, you wouldn't want to get caught or get any of your links caught because it exposes the whole network.
Are you acting like you're sending messages?
But yeah. Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense. That's a really good point. I do think we probably underestimate these.
Only.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a lot, but I also think it's a general misconception. People think overdoses are like so massively like a problem when it's like when you look at alcohol and smoking.
Interesting.
What is the real problem?
Yeah.
So what I also found interesting is that with smoking, typically the deaths occur in older people, mainly people aged like 70 and older. Whereas with drug use and alcohol, it's normally younger people that are impacted, people 50 and younger, and also men.
Yeah. And my question is this stats, is it what, I don't know if you looked into it, but was it similar before alcohol and tobacco use was legalized?
Oh, that's really hard to tell. That's really hard to tell because like our only comparison would be what, maybe in the 1920s when alcohol was prohibited in the US. I think it'd be really hard to tell.
Yeah, that would be interesting to know.
Yeah,
to see a comparison.
But the thing is, like, has there ever really been a time when it's like globally alcohol and smoking was just not allowed? Like people have been drinking wine.
They've been drinking.
Jesus been turning water into wine.
Jesus he doing it.
He been on this. So
yeah,
I think it'd be hard to tell with that one. But good point. Now my next question is, with something so deadly, so fatal, can cause dependence, tolerance, addiction, why would you do it? Why do people do drugs?
You asking me?
Yeah, you.
You asking why do people do drugs?
No, I'm asking you. They're not here right now. You are.
Why? Okay. Why do I think people do?
Why
drugs?
do you think people do drugs?
I mean, there's several reasons why somebody could decide to do drugs. They could just try it because it's like, okay, I want to see what's the big fuzz.
Curiosity.
What's the hype?
What's the
hype? Or it could be, that maybe people in their family do it as well, so they're more likely to do it.
They think it's just normal.
Yeah, I think it's normal. Or it's peer pressure. Yeah, it's a very important factor.
Who was that for?
Even if you've been at university or in high school, we can't ignore that as a factor, that peer pressure is a major contributor.
It is.
And then there's also that, also the financial incentive. This is speaking from like someone that is dealing, right?
Oh, okay.
Okay, if someone, let's say they really need money and they don't have an education, they haven't accessed, they were not able to afford to go into school, or they said they had to provide food for their family. They said when their father is not there, then they would want to maybe find a new way to generate income for the family. There's that, and then there's addiction, potentially dependence. Like if you have a genetic predisposition, then you're more likely to even want to try and do it. So I think that there's several factors. Or it's also just there. Some people have, you can't ignore that some of these drugs grow in the ground, in the soil. So if you just see drugs near you, you'd want to be like, okay, let me just try.
Yeah, what is this?
If it's just right there, just pick up the mushroom. I'm not saying you should do it. Hey, I see you. You're judging me already. You just pick it up and
Yeah. No, that's covers a whole lot of them. For me, what I was curious about, and I think what people underestimate, is the biological reasons. Like you said, it's really important to keep in mind that some people may just have like that predisposition, something in their genetics, something that runs in their family, that just means even alcohol, they're just more predisposed to getting addicted to such substances. And then when you think about it as well, from a biological level, once you try the drug, right, the drug excites the part of the brain that makes you feel good. After you take the drug for a while, the feel good parts of your brain, they get used to the drug. You like feeling good.
You like the good feeling.
Yes. Then you need to take more of the drug to get the same good feeling. Soon, your brain and your body must have the drug to feel normal, like we spoke about. And you will feel sick, anxious, irritable without that drug. Nobody wants to feel that way.
Nobody.
I don't want to feel that way.
I don't want to feel that way either.
So if I don't want to feel that way, if I want the good feeling, I'll just take my drug.
Okay, take them.
Yeah. No, you're like, okay, take them.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. And
At
so,
your own risk.
At your own risk. At your own risk. So they've actually done genetic studies, or not genetic studies, rather brain studies of people with addiction, and there's actually physical changes in the parts of the brain that are important for judgment, making decisions, learning, memory, and controlling behavior. So there is genuinely a part of, being dependent on a drug that is due to your brain chemistry actually just changing. Like there's no sense of, if you just have the willpower, you can just change. You can just stop the drug. No, your brain and your body are now dependent on that drug.
And there's also stress. Forgot to mention that some people, they live pretty much their whole life not really feeling the need to, and then life just hits. Especially, I'm thinking particularly for these celebrities, the pressure to constantly perform at a very high level with a big platform can be quite daunting.
Yeah, 100%. We know very commonly as well, Wall Street people, like you were saying, medical students or just university students, people who maybe are really in high pressure jobs and environments. They'll take things like cocaine, speed, methamphetamines just to keep up and stay awake and, keep on top of everything. Then when we think about just like social reasons, like you mentioned, there's peer pressure, but they also see that people who are more at risk of ending up with a drug dependency are people who had a difficult childhood, people who had some form of early trauma. Because obviously people you don't want to feel bad all the time, so sometimes you just use the drugs as the coping mechanism.
Escape route.
Yeah, it's the escape route. And like you said, maybe you're just curious.
You just want to try.
You just want to try new things.
You just want to try and taste.
Yeah, because what
the
I thought...
forbidden fruit.
Forbidden fruit. You're right. It's forbidden. For reals.
Forbidden.
You could go to jail.
Yes.
But yeah, that's one thing I thought was crazy. I've heard of people who do like cocaine socially.
Okay.
As in, they just say, when I'm at parties,
so
I just take a little snort.
You just want to get a high at a casual party.
So let me just do some cocaine.
Yay.
Bro.
Anyways, me, I'm not judging. I'm just like, my body, how's that going to feel?
Yeah. That's when I also I got interested in this whole conversation around legalizing drugs, because I really thought cocaine was, you try it once, you're hooked. That's the end of you. That's the end.
I think there is definitely a stigma attached to cocaine in particular. But when you hear somebody say cocaine, it's like, you doing cocaine?
It sounds like a serious drug.
You're a serious... You're a serious stoner.
So we've talked about all the problems that can arise from drug overdoses, addiction, and obviously without mentioning that indirectly, people who do have overdoses, they have to be treated in hospitals. So there is a burden associated there with treating people with drug overdoses and with addictions. So my question is, we have this whole big problem of drugs, and we've tried to just get rid of them. They're not going anywhere.
They're not.
Should we just decriminalize them?
All of them.
All the drugs.
Decriminalize all drugs.
Should we just decriminalize them and say, you know what, everyone, just do what you want to do with the drugs?
That's a good question.
With the drugs.
You asking me?
Who else am I asking, bro? Who else?
I don't know. You were talking to yourself. Do we decriminalize them or legalize them?
Decriminalize or legalize? We can get into that too. About what would be the difference.
So, I know what you're trying to catch me.
I'm not trying to catch you.
She's trying to get me canceled.
I'm just trying to get your thoughts.
Trying to get my thoughts.
Babe, this is a safe space.
Is it?
It is.
Is it?
It's just me.
It's just
me.
Is you and potentially anyone listening to this?
Don't think about that.
I won't think about them. I'll just act like I'm talking to you in private. Because this is between us, yeah. It goes nowhere else.
No one.
No one.
I'm not even going to tell anyone.
My answer is no.
Oh. We should not.
I think. Oh no. I think decriminalizing is not a problem. Like removing the criminal, the criminal sanctions associated to using drugs. It's gonna be problematic. Like, how you gonna ban me for taking something that goes in the ground? That's the first thing. But then to legalize all drugs, my answer is no, because some of them are very dangerous. And there's no guarantee that even if you regulate it, people are not going to misuse it. So now if you're going to give it to people, you're going to distribute it. Yes, you can regulate it in terms of, okay, this is the dose I would recommend, etc. But then now if it's all legalized for everyone to access, we mentioned the genetic predisposition. Some people may not know that they have a genetic predisposition, so they're not gonna know until they try it, and then they try it, and then all of a sudden, getting so
that's what Johnson thinks drugs do.
Whatever it does to you, only you know. My thing is, I think to decriminalize it, that's okay. I'm not against that. I think it's on a public health perspective, it's not problematic in the sense that you're removing that motivation for people to do it. What's the main reason why people decide to start dealing drugs?
Start dealing?
What's the main reason? It's because these drugs are not being taxed, right? So it's available, but the government cannot tax it.
No.
Essentially.
You get all the profits.
They get all the profits. So there's a lot of money being made from this. And they're like, yes, let's do it. So now the government's now deciding to have this war on drugs. It's not been effective.
No.
Right?
No.
It's not been effective. So making it a criminal thing hasn't worked. But now my thing is, are we not going to legalize every drug that there is? My answer is it's like a no to like, I don't know. And like personally, I think it's dangerous in the sense that I don't think there's enough that we know in terms of all these drugs and how they impact people, especially different demographics of people. I guess we understand how opioids work, and we understand how paracetamol works. We understand how the usual drugs work for medicinal use. Like, we have that generic understanding, but I feel like there is still that discrepancy in research when it comes to how it works, how the pathogenesis in different groups. Like, for example, in I don't know, people that are overweight, people that are a bit underweight, people that are exposed to, air pollution. What's the effect in these different, I don't think we know enough yet. And so if we legalize everything now, it's like, on what basis would it be?
On what basis? These are all great questions. For me personally,
I know where you're going.
I think just decriminalize them. Just decriminalize them. I feel like I am more convinced that decriminalization is better than what we currently have, and I think we both agree there. At the very least, that some of the drugs should be decriminalized. Should it be all of them? Part of me wants to just say yes. Because I'm like, either way, like, what we currently have is not working. People will find these drugs anyway, anyhow.
They gonna do it anyway. And I came across this documentary, right? It was this white man, like a proper, like, when you imagine him, he looks like he works, like he's a geek, like he works in like a tech company just seriously coding, computer science.
He's like a data engineer from Coca-Cola.
There you go.
That's an Atlanta joke for all the fans. I know Justin don't watch it, but yeah.
Or like he's a data engineer for Google. I don't know.
Yeah,
like them ones, you know.
Yeah.
Serious.
Yeah.
But he was talking about how he was a drug dealer, for a good 2 decades.
Yeah.
And how he basically explaining how the whole system works, and how no matter how many sanctions the governments decide to put, they come up with new ways to smuggle. Mm-hmm. They come up with new ways. And usually the people that they would recruit are people that have normal jobs, especially people that have some form of skill. They will not hire you if you don't have any skills. So for those of you that think that people that do drugs is because they're jobless or they're basically useless in society, I quote. No, in this case he was saying that for the type of CV that I look for in in our network are people that have real skills, that have potentially worked in the past, or that are currently working.
Not work experience.
work experience. He said, I want to see work experience. I need to see, it needs to be well spoken. He was very well outspoken. You would never imagine that this guy, the biggest smuggler he's actually a British man, the biggest smuggler in town. Started from the age of 16, then continued doing it and continued up until the point where essentially he got caught. But his strategy was that
key point, he still got caught.
He said his strategy was that he would basically, I don't know how to explain it, he would put the drugs, like install them within rubber. And that's how he would go through airports. So he would avoid places like the US where there's potentially like a death penalty in some states, or like places where else he said some places in Asia as well, where he said they wouldn't
maybe Philippines, because I know they have like a death. I think you can die.
You can die.
Be killed.
So they would avoid such places. So they'll go through like the places where it's okay, it's decent. And from what he said, he was basically advising, saying that the government is not winning this war, and as a matter of fact, if you're sending people to prison, you're instead training them on how to find better ways.
They say you're facilitating sharing of knowledge, collaboration,
literally. He was like, you're finally putting them together in one place. They're forming stronger networks. And he said, I quote, he said, prison is the final school of crime. So, good luck sending them all to prison. Fine, you can continue penalizing them, send them all to jail. They're all gonna collaborate together, form an association.
Yeah, stronger and better.
And then when they come out, they pass it on from generation to generation. So I think, to answer your question of should we decriminalize drugs, I think when I think of this, I just think, because of how he laid the facts, he was not biased at all. He was literally just stating the facts of how it works, and how he was saying that I've done it all. I was smuggling cocaine, particularly cocaine, and he said that the only thing was that he knew that there would be a time where he would get caught. That was the thing, that at some point, especially like there was a time, the moment where he ended up being sentenced for about 12 years in Ecuador in prison. He ended up being sentenced 12 years, and before when he was about to get caught, that was a back and forth thing from him. He did not have that peace of mind. He was always like finding new ways. Yes, he escaped, but he could tell that his time was coming.
He had limited time. Yeah, this one just illustrates to me the whole thing of when these drugs, we can decriminalize them, which I think a lot of people don't find that problematic, because it's like, given the reasons why people actually do drugs, like we said, it could just be a coping mechanism, whatever it may be. Okay, let's not punish people who we just find are using the drugs, but maybe let's ban the sale of these drugs. However, it's like the black market is just gonna exist, and like you're saying, they will have their ways. They will have their ways. Where there's a will, there's a way.
And other things, like even if we end up legalizing them, what's gonna happen? The one thing we know about pharmaceutical companies, like they like money, they like profit, so the government will impose really high taxes, and they're gonna be overly priced. And guess what? The black market is gonna do? They're gonna sell it at lower prices, and you'll continue.
This is my other thing when it comes to the actual legalizing of the sale, because I thought at first, I was like, let's just decriminalize, that's enough. But legalizing, I think as well, is gonna help with this thing. I'm glad you brought up the taxes, because I'm like, we already put taxes on like the sale of alcohol, cigarettes, sugar tax here in the UK. Why can't we do the same with some of these drugs? Instead of all the money just being channeled to the black market, and you're spending all this money investing in this war on drugs, which I don't even know what you are doing. How are you fighting drugs?
Literally, you're fighting the ground.
Yeah, what are you gonna do, bro? Like, you've already lost.
Like,
you know what I mean? So instead of funneling all your money to go there, why don't you actually funnel money more into setting up actual drug prevention methods, drug treatments, maybe better education for people, and then you can actually cash in on the taxes that are made from the sale of drugs.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. I think just even looking at case studies like Portugal, where they had a similar issue where they came to the conclusion that decriminalizing all drug would be the solution, because it came to a point where they were spending more money on illegal drug use sanctions than education itself.
Think about that.
Which is quite problematic. And they saw that their prisons were getting full. They did not have the capacity to put people in jail anymore. So they were like, okay, you know what? This is clearly not working. We need a new strategy. And it's often used as a case study to show, okay, this is how it works. However, they've also had concerns around like people using heroin more, but then the way they went about it was they had more rehabilitation centers for people that were heroin addicts and whatnot. So that if people are concerned about legalizing a particular drug or decriminalizing them, then maybe instead of putting all our efforts on like criminal sanctions, then we could put efforts into like rehabilitation centers and help for people that need it, because it's not actually it's not always a matter of I just want to be a bad person and just be a rebellious criminal. No, it's not always that, because it's been so stigmatized. It's usually people that need help, because why would they go through this lens, go through all these barriers to still go against the government, go against society to still do it? You know, there has to be a reason for it, you know.
The reasons are, they're just deeper than I just want to do drugs for fun. We're saying like people, they just use it as a coping mechanism, and because that's the coping mechanism they choose, it also comes with its risk and impacts. Yeah. But I'm actually glad you brought up Portugal, because it's another country I was looking into. My second home.
Switzerland. Oh,
last
like Zimbabwe.
That's my first. What's wrong with you? I don't know how many times I have to tell this girl I am Zimbabwean.
Every season I was like, Edna, which one is it?
Today it's Switzerland.
It's Switzerland. Today she's Swiss, y'all.
Swiss.
Next episode, ask her where she's from again. We'll find out.
It might be Zambia. Anyway, Switzerland these days is known to have like quite liberal, drug policies in Europe, in the world, and all these things. But it wasn't always so, guys. It wasn't always so. I just want to take you through Switzerland's journey, Switzerland's character arc, because they went through a lot. I want to talk about this needle park that they used to have. So let's take ourselves back to the 1970s. Like much of Europe, Switzerland in the mid-1970s, they had drug laws that criminalized individual drug possession and, just the use of drugs. So if you just had them on you as a person, no. Criminal, straight to jail. Straight to jail. What's wrong with you? Yeah. Anyway, so at the same time, around the 1960s and 70s, though, there were all these countercultural movements, the hippie lifestyle, these things. And,
hip hop.
No, just hippie, not hip hop. Hippie.
Hip and then hop. It's not hip hop. Hip and then hop.
No, I'm talking about hippies. Hippies make love, not war or something. I don't know.
Okay,
yeah. Anyway. Because there was some of these countercultural movements that were happening, it also came, they think, with an increase in the use of heroin.
Okay.
in Europe in the 1960s and 70s, Western Europe particularly. This was a terrible time. 1960s, 70s, you also had HIV. You also had HIV on the up and come. In Switzerland at the time was estimated to have the highest HIV prevalence amongst European countries. Imagine Switzerland, the highest prevalence.
No, you can't even imagine that now.
Yeah, nowadays it's like,
Yeah.
what? Switzerland of all places. Anyway, a lot of this was partly due to like this problem related to heroin use and that people were transmitting it from drug injections.
Yeah.
Exchanging needles, right? So, what did they decide to do? In the canton of Zurich, they were like, we have a brilliant idea, new innovation. Why don't we create a park where the heroin users can just come and do their heroin and no one will arrest them?
Oh, wow, is that a trap? It's like, you know, when the cat decides to put cheese right there. Let's feel free.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
They were very serious.
Okay.
Even when I read this, I said, what do you mean?
Yeah, I'm not really
Literally,
this, but...
it was called Platz Spitz or Needle Park. It was like right next to the central train station. This is the park where you can come and do your heroin for free, and you know you could freely inject it and no one will arrest you.
Okay.
It was just that was the park. And at the height of this open scene, they sort of gathered around maybe 2,000 drug users a day. 2,000 a day, that's kind of a lot.
2,000 a day.
In this one park.
Wow.
And so it did not only attract drug users, heroin drug users, injectors in Switzerland, people from across Europe were coming to this one park.
Yeah, of course.
As you can imagine, chaos ensues. Like no one was overseeing this. The police could not, arrest anyone. So a lot of the problems that happened is you still continue to get people, transmitting HIV, hepatitis from the exchange of, unhygienic needles.
Yeah.
People are overdosing still. There's just many dealers in the park. It was just very chaotic. Very chaotic. Until there were this group of doctors that decided to volunteer. They were not really allowed to go into the park and volunteer, but they went against the law anyway.
Yeah.
They said, we're going to help these people. And they had this theory that obviously when you provide clean needles, when you make sure that people are using the drug safely, when they treat any of their wounds, when they, deal with any cases of overdose, that you're going to have a decrease in, obviously the overdoses, even the use of heroin itself, and the prevalence of HIV and hepatitis, right? That was their theory. And so that's what they were doing in the park. These doctors were really smart because what they did is they also started gathering data.
Okay.
As to what was going to happen. And one of the things that I found interesting, that they found as well, was they did a survey. And at the time, even in Switzerland, Europe, the public perception was that the open scene, this park, was populated mostly by unemployed drifters, waste man. Just people were not contributing nothing to society.
Official stoners. Conductors of weed. Of heroin.
There we go. But what their survey actually showed was 1/3, like 33% of these people who were frequent visitors of the park were people with jobs, families, people who had social circles. They were in mainstream society, but sometimes they just come to the heroin park and do their heroin.
I have something to say about this, I think there's this misconception that the people that do drugs are people that are jobless, unemployed, broke, basically bums.
Down bad.
Down bad. But you will be surprised.
You'd be surprised.
It literally, like as I said with this man that I mentioned the case study, you would not imagine him being the one doing drugs. So it literally could be like a young, innocent-looking white girl with blonde hair, wearing pink, all pink, like looks purely as whatever innocent means to you. It could be like even like a man in a whole suit or a woman. I don't know. Like that's the misconception, is that like people that do these drugs are like high-end criminals, but no,
exactly, they're just regular people like you and I. They just do heroin and cocaine sometimes. That's it. Anyway, the park was shut down because it was still too chaotic.
Of course.
But it did open up the door for Switzerland's, famous drug liberal policies. And so what they set up afterwards, they had needle exchanges, they had clean injection rooms where there were medical staff on hand, they had methadone prescription programs and the heroin prescription programs that now exists to this day in Switzerland for heavily dependent drug users. So, for the people that are curious, methadone is used to treat heroin addiction or dependence. So, it reduces withdrawal symptoms like shaking, flu-like symptoms, and it also helps prevent cravings, the cravings for heroin. We also have this heroin-assisted treatment, and yes, this is providing pure heroin to people. And since Switzerland introduced these laws in around 1994, we've seen a decrease in the number of heroin users. They also see a decrease in crimes from people who use heroin. A lot of these people also end up getting reintegrated into society in terms of finding jobs, because now they don't have to worry about sustaining their drug addiction. They're getting treatment for that, and they can just focus on getting better and being regular members of society. All of this to say, when people come and say, oh, you just put drugs everywhere, people are just gonna do them, you're gonna get an increase in the use of drugs, and I'm like, not necessarily. Not necessarily. I keep going back, no one necessarily wants to be addicted to drugs. It's not a great feeling.
It's not. I think you raise a really good point there, that it is a misconception that people think that if you decriminalize drugs and you make it available for people, then they're just gonna do it all and just all get high. I think, which my counter argument for this, obviously, I'm a bit torn. To be honest, I'm completely okay, I get the argument to decriminalize, to legalize drugs, because I'm okay with, I think decriminalizing is okay. Now with legalizing, I just don't think that we know enough on how it affects different people. That's my initial concern, is that how are we going to set, this case study was for heroin users, right? And they kind of knew how, okay, this person is addicted to heroin, we're going to give them meth for them to, be able to cope with the withdrawal symptoms. Now, if you're going to legalize all drugs, all drugs, all of them. Cocaine, heroin, morphine, ecstasy,
French people sound.
Opioid. You want to legalize
opioid? You're making fun of my pronunciation. Wow.
I know. You get the gist. If you're going to legalize, I haven't listed them all. There's so many, I don't know all of them. If you legalize everything, there is a huge risk that we could potentially get new drug addicts, and we'd have to take extra care for these people that are genetically predisposed to being addicted. Because I could be living here and I don't even know if I'm genetically predisposed to being addicted to that. So my issue is, legalizing all drugs? I don't think so. Maybe legalizing some of them that we're like, okay, we've studied it and we understand it well enough. But I think at the moment, the stigma around drugs is already way too high for people to even openly. We literally just have a big sound. Boom.
Sounded like a firework.
A firework outside.
I thought my life was over.
Speaking of drugs, they're literally coming for us as we speak.
Say, what were you saying?
Literally, I had a dream last night that the police came knocking on my door saying, I heard you were saying on the podcast that you want to legalize drugs. Say it right.
The war of drugs came to your doorstep.
It came to my doorstep. That's why I have to keep putting disclaimers here. Please do not come for me. What was I saying? I was saying that my issue still comes down to
we don't know enough.
We don't know enough, and these drugs will potentially kill you.
Yeah, not potentially. They can kill people.
They can kill people. Okay, we get it.
This is getting suspicious.
It's suspicious. It could kill. Drugs kill, yeah.
Drugs can kill.
And call it whatever you want to say. I'm just putting the facts straight here. There's an advantage of both sides. I get it. I get it. But
It's like I heard you.
I heard you. But my issue still comes, like, even medically, like, when I was doing a placement, of my medical science electives, I came across this woman that, you know, she was originally, she needed like treatment. I can't remember what treatment it was in particular, but I know that she needed treatment, and she used a particular drug, which was a medicinal drug, obviously not illegal, legal. And it turned out that she was dependent, and ended up having to go back to use that drug again. And this was like, I don't remember, but it was not a common drug. It was one drug that I don't remember. Don't quote me, I don't remember. But from what I can take from this is there are so many drugs available out there. So if you're gonna legalize everything, to what extent? What's the dose? And then children and young people, the people that are even gonna be interested in taking these drugs are gonna be young, vulnerable people. It's very unlikely for it to be grown adults do drugs too, yes. But the people that are going to be super excited about this new policy of legalizing all drugs, it will be the teenagers. It will be the teenagers, the people at college and uni, they would want to do it. And what happens? They're young, they're vulnerable, they're not fully developed, even from past the age of 18, like up until 25, and you're not fully developed yet. So it could make you slow, it could make you academically underperform, even performing like your regular day-to-day tasks. It could impact that, and there's just not enough to be able to say yes to it all.
For me, the thing is, let's look at alcohol and cigarettes. I'm sorry.
I knew
these are things that cause millions of deaths every year. And I agree with you. I don't think when we say decriminalize or legalize all drugs, even if we have a situation where we're selling drugs in stores or whatever, there should be age restrictions. Same way we do with alcohol and cigarettes.
And they still use it.
And they still use it. In fact, it's like you're saying, definitely there'll be people who are much more vulnerable. And to me personally, I think it's much more people with the traumas and they're trying to escape from something. They will be exposed, but studies sort of are quite uncertain about which drug they are much more likely to use. It sort of just depends on what's there. Some of them, if it's alcohol, they'll be dependent on alcohol. If it's weed, it will become weed. If meth is right there in the environment, then that's what they'll go to. So it doesn't have to be necessarily the ones that we think are like hard drugs. It could be anything.
No, but then there are drugs that are like genetically, like your family could be predisposed to heroin addiction.
That's true.
So that's what I'm talking about. I think in terms of like, it could be any drug, but like, I'm just literally right now off the top of my head, I'm thinking of How to Get Away with Murder. How Annalise was a alcohol addict, but her therapist was a heroin addict. Yeah. And his child was also a heroin addict, and it was passed on from family from generation to generation. So, yeah, I don't know if criminalizing it is a solution. That one we can say that it's not. But to legalize it, I think there are some implications, some medical implications that we cannot ignore.
But that's my thing, though. We have medical implications for smoking and alcohol as well, and we allow it. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Let's take even just marijuana versus alcohol. I'm like, alcohol, what benefits come from alcohol? Like on a body level for your health, there's no benefits. Alcohol only brings damage to your body.
Marijuana. What about a glass of wine a day?
Hey, those studies from Daily Mail, I don't know, they're all over the place. Sure, maybe there's antioxidants, whatever, but the effect of that ethanol as well. But at least marijuana, it can actually have some benefits for your body. It can be an anti-inflammatory. It can actually, I know some people who take it for their seizures, glaucoma.
Yeah.
Like, it actually has some medicinal alcohol, like, okay, maybe to sterilize things, but if you consume it.
There are benefits of alcohol. Okay, I agree with you there.
The benefits of alcohol.
Yeah. Like what? Okay, like they're not like direct medical benefits, but like, for example, if you have a cold, you just I mean it's been done before. Like, you have a cold. Hey, I said here, do not quote me here. Whatever I say here doesn't mean I've done it personally. Okay. Anyways,
so you've heard?
I've heard
from friends
that if you take alcohol when you have you're feeling really cold or whatever. Looking at me like that, you don't feel that same level of cold effects.
Justin is supporting the use of alcohol to treat your cold.
No.
Said if you're cold this winter, just take your vodka
please,
shots.
no.
You're
Go
sorry.
and stay warm, please. Go to your pharmacist.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not my point. I agree with you there in the sense that why is alcohol and cigarette use legalized and drug use illegalized?
Yes.
Because it doesn't make any sense. Even to me
No,
personally,
it don't.
it don't make sense. It don't make sense. Like, what is it about drugs? Why? What is it about drugs that makes them so bad?
Do you know what I mean?
But then it goes back to my point. Or at least with alcohol, right? There's like obviously like there are different doses, and it's like vodka that can be like really, really like strong, yeah. And then this, madam, hey, you see, this is the example that I'm telling you guys not to follow. Do not listen to her. Anyways, there's like vodka that can be quite like strong. There's like regular cocktails that are like juicy, etc. Like cute, But then with drugs, right? There's a whole field. It's not cute. It's your high. You're high. They say you're high.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, I guess that's maybe why, but I don't think that's the only reason. Like, you also can't compare like drugs to alcohol, directly compare drugs to like tobacco. I think even cigarettes are very dangerous for your health. I think personally, no, all of them are bad, okay? All of them.
Everything has a harmful effect.
Everything, all of them are bad. But you it's a good question to ask in terms of like, why is it drugs that are the ones that are illegal?
Why are we attacking drugs?
Me personally, they're all dangerous. Like, me personally, like, would you do drugs?
If they were legalized?
Yeah.
Probably. No, I don't think I'll try like meth or heroin or cocaine. Like, to me, I'm not gonna lie, in my head those are still like hard drugs.
Yeah.
But maybe the hallucinogens.
Oh.
Don't you wanna see different planes of reality?
You see, this is why me and you are different. The thing is, right? Okay, my logic, this doesn't apply to everyone, but that's just me. Okay, that's just how I was brought up. Okay? Like, I think in my brain, I'm just a bit scared.
What?
Like, okay, there was one time when I tried vodka, and I actually had angina. Like, for those of you who don't know what angina is, like, I had really bad chest pains. And that was just like small shot of alcohol almost made me. And it doesn't mean that I will never drink. No, it just means I'm a very lightweight person. That I just don't. So I'm like, if I have to try drugs now, where do I even start? How do I know which one's good for me, which one's not? And if I do it, like, what's the likelihood that I'm not gonna do it again and become addicted? That's my personal concern. I'm aware that it's a risk that I'm taking. It's a risk in terms of like, I do not fully understand what's going on with my body. Like, when I eat some foods, like when I eat, I don't know, like beans or I eat rice, I know what's gonna happen with me. It's gonna digest and go. But when I take this drug, what's gonna happen in my brain? What's gonna happen with my mental health? What's gonna happen with my hearing, my eyes, my voice, my nose? Because different drugs have different impacts. Like, I know that sometimes with some drugs that you mentioned make you hallucinate, and others can make you like hear things that you're not supposed to hear, see things that you're not supposed to see. So I think there are just too many factors why I think it is a risk that I'm personally not willing to take. If that makes sense.
That makes a whole lot of sense, and I'm glad you talked about alcohol, because I don't know what alcohol is. Like, I don't smell that, I don't see that, I don't drink that. Who is alcohol? What is that? Vodka? What? Who is that? I'm learning so much.
Yeah, of course.
I would say, when it comes to the point you made about we don't know enough, I agree with you. I think we don't know enough. There's not enough research that has been done into all these different drugs and their effects on different people, different body sizes, like we spoke about, people from different parts of the world, genetic element. there's just a lot that we don't know, but partially that's because they are illegal. Who's gonna do experiments? You can't do a clinical trial on drugs that are illegal, so we're not gonna know until all those things happen. Number 2, alcohol, right? And even cigarettes. There was a time when maybe there was like little regulation of them, and as time went on, there were more and more regulations that came into place, even for tobacco and cigarettes. A lot of pressure was put on the tobacco industry. Anyway, we've now come to a place where we say, alcohol, these are the certain percentages that are allowed, these are the age restrictions. You can see your alcohol bottle, it will show you the ingredients that are in there and everything. There'll be all of this information, there's recommendations, and everyone knows the impact. Oh my God.
Yeah, they're coming for us.
They're coming for
us.
Another firework.
This is why you should listen. We're putting our own lives at risk.
Yes. Anyway, you put all these labels. Now, the current problem when you have something that's unregulated, there's no labels. There's nobody regulating. There's nobody supervising how these things are manufactured. There's no safety checks. People, and the other thing that people don't realize is, we can have like a really pure version of the drug. Chemically, you can make it even in the chemistry lab, right? But when it's now there on the streets in the black market, people tend to cut it and mix it with just anything anyhow. And that's the other thing that ends up getting people to overdose or to accidentally die from just taking a particular drug, because it will be mixed in with all other things. Or sometimes when you have fentanyl, codeine, and you also mix it with alcohol. What is it? What is that these rappers call it? Lean. I feel like such an auntie.
What is it called again? What is it called again? That thing you young people do.
This young people are lean, it's very dangerous to just be mixing drugs
Even
and
mixing cocaine with alcohol.
Of course, bro, I'm like, I don't know what the obsession of mixing drugs and alcohol. I think it's a little dangerous. So I think in those situations, that's where the issue lies. I think in that when it is very unregulated, anything anyhow can happen, and it's much better to have it under some form of regulation, so you can actually keep watch of what's going on, and people are aware of how much they're drinking, how much they're snorting, how much they're smoking, where did it come from. They say, oh, this one is a strain from Mexico. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But legalize all drugs?
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I do hear you.
Yeah,
I hear where you're coming from.
Because think about it. The other thing with alcohol, right? I could drink alcohol and decide to go driving. Now that's not a good idea, is it? Now, no. Before coming to that, I saw this example with this. I forget his name. This neuroscientist that's like really for legalizing drugs. He was saying that before coming to record this podcast, I didn't take shots of vodka now, did I?
Okay.
I didn't take shots of vodka, I didn't drink alcohol because I'm a responsible adult. I know that I need to do a podcast and a recording be functional.
But that's me. That's you.
That's me.
But then we can't be an exception.
Let me finish. So as a responsible adult, I make that decision. If I'm drunk, I'm not going to go and drive. Why can't we trust adults to do the same thing with drugs?
Yeah, that one I agree. Like, I think that the argument that I think makes the two arguments that make the most sense when it comes to like legalizing drugs is that number one, it's a plant that grows on the ground.
What you gonna do?
How you gonna ban? How you gonna ban nature?
Yeah.
What happens in the ground? Two, yeah, we're all consenting adults. We're all capable of making decisions.
Yes.
So why should the government now decide what we should and shouldn't do in our private lives?
If I'm not harming anyone, why can't I do drugs?
If I'm not, what can I do? But it also goes down to what happens even in the medical field. Like, for example, if a patient has some form of condition and they say that, no, doctor, I want to do this, the doctor still has to have some form of holistic evaluation of the overall health, and not just say, okay, yes, whatever, because it's your consent. Yes, you give consent and you have the right to your own health, but then they also want to ensure your safety at the end of the day, and that's the most important thing. And I think this is a similar case where, like, I think a potential counter argument to that is, yes, we're all consenting adults here, and we're all grown adults capable of making our own decisions, but are we all aware of all the risks that are at stake here? That's the question. It's, yes, we're all capable of doing, as you said, with this Switzerland street park, what's it called? Legal park, whatever it's called. Yes, they were all capable of doing it, but they had to learn from that and say, these are the risks that we have taken. And which risk are we willing to take at this point? Like, if we're going to legalize all these drugs, we are expecting some damages. There will be some damages to this. We cannot ignore that. So these are all the factors that come into play. I'm not saying a yes or no. I'm not saying that no, we shouldn't legalize everything or we should legalize everything. I'm simply saying we just don't know enough yet to make that decision.
Yeah. I think that's fair enough. I would say the last thing that bothers me about when drugs are criminalized is when you look at who is actually most impacted when it comes to, you know, going to prison and all these things. I feel it is normally the poor and marginalized communities. And in fact, there's people who there's a school of thought that thinks about, like, why in the first place were these drugs banned? And it's like, you think about it, opioids, they were the opium wars with the Chinese, associated with the Chinese. And marijuana, a lot of the times associated with, like, black and Mexican people. There's people out there who don't like black and brown people. Cocaine, or crack specifically. There's, you know, theories that are probably true that it was intentionally introduced in particularly, you know, poor neighborhoods in the US to just cause disruption. So I think there is a nefarious origin to some of the reasons why some of these drugs are banned. And even especially when in the US, when you look at which people make up their prison populations and which people are actually, you know, sent to prison for minor drug offenses, like just having drug on you. It is black men. It's black men. They're the ones who are suffering the most. So those are the other things that just have me questioning, like, why are these things legalized, like illegal in the first place?
No, it's a very good point. It's a very good. There is this. That's the thing. I think even in the US, I think Barack Obama was mentioning that he initially, when he went in position as president, the number of black men that were in jail or prison because of drug use was off the roof. So he had to find ways to have, like, rehabilitation centers, maybe not legalize everything, maybe find ways to, like, just soften the policies a little bit in some states to make it more accessible, or like much less criminalized for these people, because he particularly saw that it was mostly the black and brown people that were going to prison for it, which says a lot.
Yeah. I guess maybe then that brings us more into, well, what we can do better, and because I think I agree with you, or maybe having just a free-for-all right now, like we did with our Needle Park, just say, you can just come do your drugs, whatever happens. I do think there needs to be some preventative measures in place. I mean, regulation, I think, is quite obvious as, like, the immediate benefit. But at the same time, what are actually going to do to maybe prevent people from using drugs in the first place? Because, like we said, there's people who they will use them the first time. Maybe they have a genetic predisposition to then getting addicted to that drug. There's people who use them. They can have a psychotic break. They can have a mental break. Like, y'all, pay attention. I know a lot of people out there think, you know, marijuana, especially weed, is completely harmless. No. For some people, in rare cases, you smoke weed the first time you do it.
That's my fear.
You could have a mental breakdown. That's my
fear. That if you didn't know.
These fireworks, y'all.
That is my main fear. Like, on a more personal level, obviously it doesn't apply to everybody. My main fear is I just don't know. I just don't know what's gonna happen to my body. So and just to backtrack a bit.
Okay. Let's backtrack.
Back. I think that I think what do you think we should do that now? Like, do you think that all drugs should be legalized within the next 5 years?
Yes.
You think we're there?
Yes.
I don't think so. This is why I disagree.
what do we have
the
left to discover?
research, I think that people, as much as, and I think that just, it's kind of like the discussion around like whether the chicken was there first or the egg was there first, right? With the research and the stigma, we need to find a way to destigmatize drug use in the first place, and then do research, because a lot of these policies are backed by what's currently happening, like case studies, right? So it's almost like I don't think that there's enough that has been done yet to evaluate the risk in different demographic groups, and I think there is a huge potential risk there. It's like, okay, right now, if we legalize all drugs, yes, and we have regulations and whatnot, on what basis? What's the backup? What's the evidence? What's the evidence saying?
I think we can look to places like Switzerland and Portugal and what they've been doing. However, I will caveat that with, I think each country kind of needs to go on that journey for themselves. What works in Switzerland and Portugal might not be what works in Benin. You know what I mean? And Benin may not have the same kind of burden when it comes to drugs. Maybe people don't even use cocaine like that. Maybe for them it's something else.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's actually alcohol. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So I think there's no one solution for each country. And I think you're right. I think the evidence will just have to come from a little bit of experimentation.
Okay.
Experimentation is like, how are you gonna do that if you just completely stigmatize drugs and you say, we're just gonna destroy them, we're just gonna put guns and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Drugs.
I think that leads me on to my next point about what are our next steps and what can we do better, right? What you were initially leading us to.
Yeah. Do you have any initial thoughts?
Yes. I was gonna say,
she was waiting.
That leads me on to my point around, maybe we're not there. To me personally, obviously we are different people. As much as we're the same podcast, we have different opinions and different views and different backgrounds. My initial say is, I don't think we're there yet to legalize all drugs, and I'm thinking more of more like a health risk assessment here from that perspective. I don't think we're there yet. However, what needs to be done? We need to start by removing the stigma around drug use. That could be done through, like, I don't know, like maybe like the NGOs are currently working around that. Maybe having more open conversations like this, like even for us, like to talk about this was a bit like, okay, we're talking about illegal things. We need to be careful here. So maybe having more open conversations on what exactly are the risks here, and is it possible? Is it feasible? What's the research saying? And if we open more and more doors for this, then we could go on a path towards less legalizing all drugs.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the biggest thing for me is, instead of having this war on drugs, I think countries needed, especially the US, needed to look more into the reasons why people take drugs in the first place, and then tackle those reasons. Because the reason is not necessarily, not everyone is just in it to make money and have a good time and lie down on their bed. You know what I mean? People, like we said, it could be from trauma, it could be like sudden stress, like you said, people, pressures at work, at school, whatever it may be. So it's about addressing those issues first, I think, before you dive into just removing the drug itself. I think the underlying reason is the reason the person did the drug in the first place. That's what's important to tackle. Number two, for me, I think what's important is to actually still have accessibility of harm reduction services, like we see in Portugal, like we see in Switzerland. I think Canada as well is moving towards that way of for people who are already addicted to drugs, because like we said, people are going to do drugs anyway. People find the drugs that they need, but how are we going to treat them? We still need these harm reduction services. I think we've seen that they're like pretty much quite a success in Switzerland and Portugal, helping reduce new drug users, helping reduce crimes, and also helping actually reintegrate people into society and get jobs and contribute to the economy.
Beautifully said.
Thank you. And I think as well, when we think globally, maybe not all countries have the resources to have harm reduction services and to provide very pure heroin to people. You know what I mean? So maybe it is more about some of these other treatments that we talked about, like the methadone, which is just, a drug that can be used to help people with heroin addictions. Better access to just clean needles. Something I was reading about that was really interesting and cool is was the way they adapted their harm reduction services during COVID. Like, think about it, like, we're all in lockdown and stuff like that. People couldn't go to these clinics where they could safely inject drugs. What would they do? So they had needle, like, vending machines. You could, you know, send them to people, you know, online. They order them. So yeah, I think better access to such services, simple things that I think are not as expensive but could be applied elsewhere in the world.
Yeah, great.
And then the last thing for me is regulation. I think that is the way forward, to be honest with you, for people to be able to know what dosages are maybe safe, for people to know what exactly is in the drugs that they're using. But I agree with you that has to come with research.
Yes.
It's not just going to...
Please. Because, yeah, finish.
It's not just going to come just anyway, anyhow. And I think, what do you think about, for example, having like almost giving people licenses to buy drugs? Almost like how you get a driver's license, right? You get tested, they screen you, they make sure you're okay and safe to drive. Why don't we give people like licenses to buy drugs?
Yeah, that's I think that's a interesting idea. It's doable. I just think that it goes back to my point initially on like what's the evidence and what's the backup.
Yeah.
What's the foundation? If we're gonna say you can't do it, why? Like maybe is it that we've seen a significant difference in addiction for heroin amongst, I don't know, people with a BMI of, I don't know, like 30 plus or something, you know. We need something like that, and I don't think we're there yet in terms of like, if we're gonna deny people certain drugs or certain dosages, like what's the reason for it? What's the research backup, and what's the implication for potentially teenagers and children that are gonna, obviously they're gonna use it, and what's the risk assessment here? What's the potential mitigation that we're gonna do to address that?
Those are all fantastic, great points. Anything else you think we can do better as a world?
Don't do drugs.
After all that.
No. But I think, no, on a serious note, I would just like to say we are aware that people do it anyways. That's why we're laughing throughout this entire episode, because we know that most people actually do drugs, and obviously they'll never say it out loud. But so we're speaking to the ones that do, yeah?
I claim it.
The people that do. Please do not share needles. First of all, like, this is more for like the globies and whatnot. If you're gonna do drugs, do not share needles with your friends. Please do not share needles even with your boyfriend. No, don't do it, girl. Don't do it, boy. That's the number one thing. Just be careful. Like, do your research. Obviously, there's not much research being done at the moment, but make sure that you actually understand what you're getting yourself into when doing it. Don't feel like you have to do it out of peer pressure. I'm speaking because like it may seem like to us, obviously, like we're young adults, like we kind of already know what's at stake here, but I think when you're at that young age, you almost want to please everyone. So please, like, if you're listening to this, or you know, like, you have a sister or a brother or a younger sister, or like you have children, please let them know that obviously they may even do it behind your back and you will never know. So just make sure that they actually understand the research behind it and they know the implications of doing it at the moment. That's what I would say.
That's great. I think that's great advice. If we're actually gonna speak to anyone here that, you know, consumes drugs, again, to reiterate, we do not condone the use of any illegal drugs. We do not condone none of that. We never said go do drugs. That's not what we're saying.
That's on period.
You still need to follow the law. But like Justin said, know what you're actually consuming. And my personal advice is just avoid mixing drugs. Avoid mixing drugs, taking Percocet, taking Molly, taking codeine, and then you drink some alcohol. Oh, baby, no, don't do that. Don't do it. Don't do it. Check what is legal where you live. Check what is legal. I know maybe some of you live in the Netherlands and you think that's not a problem for me. But, you know, check what is legal where you live. And if you are gonna try something new, something different, even if you go to the Netherlands to do shrooms or weed over there, just be with a trusted person who actually cares for you.
Yes.
Because like we said, there's always risk of you having some kind of adverse reaction, something that unexpected can happen. You can have a psychotic breakdown. You know, people weed, for example, you experience paranoia. So it's always useful to have someone there who cares for you and will be there with you. And if you need to seek advice and medical help, they'll be able to like help you through that. Now, for anyone who is actually seeking care for drug addiction, for example, if you're in the UK, I was actually surprised to find this out, is if you need treatment for drug addiction, you're entitled to NHS care in the same way as anyone who has like any other health problem. So normally they advise that you go to your GP first. And you can discuss with them what treatment you want, or what is your problem that you're facing right now, and they can give you advice. Maybe you're not comfortable speaking to the GP, that is fine. Like Jocelyn said, there are actually NGOs out there that exist that help people and support people. There's local drug treatment services, and we'll link to this website that the NHS also recommends. It's called the Frank website, and that's where you can find some local drug treatment services. It's actually a really interesting site. It's called Talk to Frank, and there's they have links and a lot of information, educational material on different drugs, their effects, what the law says about them, because in different countries you can have class A, class B, whatever drugs, and they all carry different punishments and treatments in the law. Yeah, and they also point you to where you can get help. Just keep that in mind if you need help. If you are someone, maybe there's someone in your family who has a drug addiction or who struggles with dependency, it doesn't even have to be drugs, it could just be alcohol. And you might feel the need to speak to them. I don't know how we feel about interventions. What do you think about interventions?
Public health interventions or personal interventions?
Personal interventions. Like I say, Jocelyn, we need to talk.
I mean, like, if it's someone that you love, you do that of love, I think it's okay. Obviously, you need to be very careful about how you phrase it, how you word things, be very compassionate and non-judgmental. So I think, if you think there's someone that you're concerned about, it's okay to sit them down and have that conversation with them, obviously, with love.
Say with love.
With love.
Yeah, I completely agree. And there's many resources that you can find online to help you, to sort of guide you through how you can prepare an intervention from someone. You can ask a trusted addiction professional, a doctor, a mental health professional about what to do, what are treatment options for your loved one, what they would recommend. They can give you some tips. Again, you can also contact any national organizations, NGOs, local clinics. They can give you some advice and tips on how to go about getting someone you love the help that they need. Because at the end of the day, let's remember that drugs can be very harmful and dangerous when used improperly.
And just one more thing, this is for the addicts. I think, first of all, I mentioned earlier about stigma. I think we should really be careful about how we view these people. A person that does drugs not always a black person, it's not always a brown person. It literally could be anyone. It could be a white man, it could be literally someone from anywhere. It's not, let's not racialize it, please. And two, it's more people that are addicts, as I was saying before. Don't feel like you're alone, because you're not. Like, you're not alone, and it's possible to combat it. Remember that it's possible for you to have a peace of mind, and it's also possible for you to be an addict, but you cannot have both at the same time. So just remember that you can have a peace of mind, you can be an addict, but you cannot have a peace of mind and be an addict at the same time. And that's usually the advice that they give to most addicts. But it is possible to come out of it. Just seek help. It's not an easy thing. It's really not. It's easier said than done, right? It's not an easy thing to go through, but don't be afraid to seek help and ask for help. Like as Edna said, like go to your GP or like your the local NGO, whatever. Try your best to seek help out of it, but speak to someone about it, because you may feel alone, especially if you feel like you're left out of society, or that you don't fit in, or that you do not have the skills. It's still possible for you to recover from that. It's possible to have an out, and do it whilst you can. And people that are also like, dealing drugs, like smuggling drugs, we're not going to stigmatize you and judge you. No, we're simply saying that once you still have the opportunity to get out of it, do it. It's possible, and it would eventually you don't want to continuously have this pressure or that like paranoia about getting caught. So we just highly recommend that whilst you can, make good use of your business, because you have an entrepreneurial spirit. If you're using all these tactics to be dealing drugs and like smuggling them and going to this black market, you're doing that. That means you are smart. That means you have a great business mindset and you have a whole business plan. Use it for something that's legal, that you can actually do and bear great fruit in society, and in a way that you will not constantly feel like you have this huge burden on your back, essentially.
Yeah, no, just always good to keep in mind that, it may always seem like you have no other option than to go into drug dealing or whatever it may be, but there's always, I do hope there's always another option out there. I think the last thing for me is related to language. Maybe this is coming. My previous boss would be so happy, and our copy editor. We used to talk a lot about language. Even me sometimes, like even to label someone an addict, to say things like a druggie, a dope, or whatever it may be. Like, just be mindful of like some of the language you use, because like we said, it's not always obvious who is actually using drugs, and some of these labels may just make them feel a bit more ashamed, or because it's you can't just label them some dopey or stoner or whatever it may be. That's not their whole life. No, the use of drugs is not their whole life. So just again, be mindful of how you speak about these issues.
No, it's a very good point. And obviously, we always speak about this like jokes. We don't actually think about how it affects people on a more personal level. So, no, it's a great point.
So, those are our thoughts today about decriminalizing drugs. I hope you learned something today. I hope you don't think we do drugs.
I hope not. I've been putting disclaimers. I put at least 10 disclaimers in this episode.
Yes. And I genuinely hope we see more reform around this. I think it's really needed.
It is.
So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for joining us. I am Edna.
And I'm Jocelyn.
We are young global health professionals, and we've been your hosts for this episode of the World Health Investigation podcast. Jocelyn, where can the people find us?
Before they even find us, find us in person. In person. Debate night. Please make sure you do show up. We're having a live debate night. Speak of the unspoken, happening in November 2022.
In this November, it will happen.
This November. Obviously, we've set a date of the 9th of November, but this date might actually be reviewed. So please make sure you follow us, and you follow us on all our socials so you stay up to date. But this will be a place where we take these topics on a much deeper level. We take it on the personal level. We take it on all the levels you can imagine, and you can have your say.
Yes, there will actually be an opportunity for the audience to give input. So please get your tickets. Register
right now, and please make sure to follow us on our socials, on Instagram and Twitter at WHI_podcast. We also have a TikTok account at WHI_podcast. Go and watch us do small banter on TikTok. And we have a LinkedIn and Facebook page, World Health Investigation Podcast. Please go and follow, support, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Turn on the notification bell below. Turn it on. Ding ding. And give a like. Support us. As I said before, we're just young girls trying our very best to produce something and serve and just raise awareness around topics that matter.
Yes. Thank you all so much for listening, and we shall see you next week.
Bye.